My name is Deborah Howard, and if you had asked me even a week ago what my life looked like, I would have told you it was stable, predictable. Not perfect, but familiar in all the ways that make you believe the ground beneath your feet won't suddenly split open. I lived with my boyfriend, John Henderson, for 6 years, 9 years together total. No engagement, not yet, because John always said he wasn't ready, and I convinced myself that patience was the same thing as love. I thought we were building something slow and steady, something lasting. Looking back, maybe I was just building alone. Last Thursday started like any other ordinary day that disguises a disaster. I had landed a huge account at work, a medical software firm I'd been courting for months. To celebrate, one of my biggest clients insisted on taking me to dinner at an upscale Italian place downtown, the kind of restaurant with soft lighting, heavy table linens, and a menu full of dishes you pretend to recognize. Around 4 p.m. I sent John a text, going to be late tonight. Client dinner. His reply came quickly. Perfect timing. My mom wants me to come over for dinner. She's been lonely lately. Don't wait up. Love you. It felt ordinary. His mother lived 40 minutes away and he visited her a couple of times a month. There was nothing strange in that. Nothing suspicious. If anything, I was relieved he had plans. 2 guilt-free work dinners were rare. By 7:15, I arrived at the restaurant. My client was running late, so the hostess seated me at a small corner booth to wait. I tucked my phone beside my water glass and started organizing emails, mentally running through my talking points for later. Then I heard a laugh I didn't recognize at first but felt somehow. A woman's laugh, light high, then dipping into a husky snort at the end. It was oddly distinct, the sort of laugh you remember if you've seen enough old pictures of the person who makes it. Pictures John had shown me years ago when he talked about his past relationships in that casual, dismissive way people use when they promise they're over it. Her name was Marina Hale, John's ex-girlfriend. I glanced up only because the sound tugged at something, not because I expected anything, not because I was suspicious, not because I was looking for my boyfriend at a restaurant he shouldn't have been in. But I saw him anyway, 3 tables away. John sat across from a woman, Marina, her hand resting lightly on the stem of her wine glass, her body angled toward him in a way you don't angle toward someone's mother's kitchen table. They were sharing a bottle of red, deep and rich and intimate under the soft lighting. His eyes were fixed on her like she'd just said something clever. She was smiling like she knew exactly how to receive that gaze. And then she reached across the table and touched his face, a slow brush of fingers along his jaw. My stomach twisted, but my mind still refused to accept the obvious. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe he ran into an old friend. Maybe. Then Marina leaned in and kissed him. Not a polite kiss, not an awkward surprise. A deep practice kiss. A kiss that felt like a continuation, not a beginning. For a moment, my whole body went silent. My heartbeat forgot what it was supposed to do. The room dimmed into a tunnel. Sounds warped, and I watched the man I loved kiss a woman he claimed was part of a past closed long ago. I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I didn't get up and sprint across the room in righteous fury. Shock is quiet, colder than you think. It settles in your bones and makes your movements deliberate and small. A waiter approached my table, asking something about sparkling or still. I must have nodded because he placed a glass of water in front of me, though I don't remember lifting my eyes to meet his. My hands trembled just enough that I had to steady them on the table. I don't know what instinct took over, survival, self-preservation, or something mechanical, but I reached for my phone. I angled it carefully, zooming just enough, capturing John and Marina mid-kiss, her hand on his cheek, his lips pressed to hers, timestamp included. Then I opened our message thread. I typed, "Enjoy dinner with your mom. Attach the photo," and hit send. I watched from across the restaurant the exact moment her phone buzzed in his pocket. John pulled away from Marina, smiling lazily at first, pulling out his phone, no doubt expecting a harmless check-in or a goodnight text. Then his face drained. He dropped his phone. It clattered against the table loud enough that Marina jerked backward in surprise. He looked up, eyes scanning the room with frantic, jerky movements, searching for me, searching for a way to undo something that had already been cemented in digital proof. Our eyes met across the room. It wasn't anger I saw in his expression. It wasn't guilt either. It was panic. The panic of someone who never expected accountability to arrive so cleanly, so suddenly, so undeniably. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I stood, slipped a 20 under the untouched water glass, and walked out. No scene, no dramatic confrontation, nothing he could twist later. Outside, the cool night air hit me like a slap. But even then, my body felt disconnected, like I was watching myself from a distance. I walked to my car, sat inside, locked the doors. Then I drove. Not home, never home, not yet. I drove around the city for almost 2 hours, headlights slicing through the dark, my phone vibrating nonstop beside me, calls, texts, voicemails. All John. I didn't open any of them. Around 10 p.m., I pulled into a hotel parking lot and booked a room. The bed was stiff, the pillows flat, and I slept maybe 2 hours total, staring at the ceiling, waiting for reality to settle into something I could understand. It never did. The next morning, I powered my phone back on. 38 missed calls, nearly 50 messages. The highlights. It's not what it looks like. Deborah, please come home. We need to talk. You're overreacting. She's just a friend. I can explain everything. Where are you? I'm worried sick. This is happening because you're always working. We never spend time together. That last message cut through the fog in my mind like a blade. Less than 12 hours after being caught kissing another woman, John had already shifted from remorse to blame, rapid, practiced, familiar, in a way I suddenly realized I had ignored too many times. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I opened my contact list and called the one person who had always warned me to watch for red flags, my older sister Natalie. Her voice broke before I could finish explaining. Come home, she said. You're not staying alone tonight. I didn't realize until that moment that I'd been holding my breath for hours. I gathered my bag, checked out of the hotel, and headed directly to her house without once looking back toward the life I had begun leaving behind the night before. Natalie didn't ask a single question when she opened the door. She just pulled me into her arms and held me tightly in that fierce, grounding way only an older sister can. For the first time in hours, maybe days, I felt something settle inside me. When she released me, her eyes flicked over my face, taking in everything I was trying not to feel. You're staying here, she said simply. No arguments. Her house felt warm, steady, lived in. The kind of place you go when you need to borrow some stability because you've run out of your own. I put my bag in the guest room and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed again, John, but I turned it off and let the silence swallow his name. Natalie knocked and stepped in, holding a mug of tea. She placed it beside me and sat down. Tell me. So I did. Every detail. The restaurant, Marina, the kiss, the photo, the messages, the way John's face had fallen apart when he realized I'd seen everything. When I finished, she didn't gasp or dramatize. She just exhaled slowly, anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. Deborah, that wasn't an accident. That wasn't a moment of weakness. That was deliberate. Her voice softened. And you didn't deserve any of it. I didn't trust myself to answer, so I just nodded. We stayed like that silent until the doorbell rang. The sound jolted me. Natalie stood. Stay here. I followed her into the hallway despite her telling me not to. She cracked the front door open. John stood outside, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot, jaw tight with panic he was trying to mask as righteous anger. Is Deborah here? He demanded. That depends, Natalie replied, her tone cool. Why? I need to talk to her, he said, trying to peer past her shoulder. She's blowing this way out of proportion. It was one dinner. Natalie didn't flinch. You kissed another woman. You lied about seeing your mother. You lied to her face. That's not one dinner. You're manipulating her, he snapped. You never liked me. Correct, Natalie said dryly. Now leave. He tried to push the door open. Natalie braced her arm against it unmoved. Deborah, he shouted over her shoulder. Please, just listen to me. I backed away instinctively. Natalie's voice rose firm but controlled. She does not want to see you. Leave before I call someone who will make you. John's eyes darted between us, desperation leaking through the cracks of his fading confidence. He shook his head, muttered something under his breath, then turned sharply and stomped down the porch steps. Natalie shut the door and leaned against it for a moment. That's the beginning of it, she said quietly. He's going to try to rewrite the story. Don't let him. The next morning confirmed exactly that. John's mother left 6 voicemails before noon. I listened to the last one only because I wanted to understand exactly what narrative John had fed her. Deborah, this is childish. John told me everything. He made a mistake. A woman keeps her family together. She doesn't run away because her partner makes one emotional error. You need to grow up. Stop embarrassing yourself. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Something inside me clenched, then hardened. Natalie walked into the room just in time to hear the final line. Give me that, she said, grabbing the phone gently but firmly. She turned it off again. You don't need that poison right now. I didn't argue. By Monday morning, I felt like I was floating through a fog. The The world was moving, but I wasn't part of it. Still, I forced myself to take the next step. I walked into the office of a family law attorney, a woman named Amara Levin who radiated calm confidence in a way I desperately needed. I handed her everything, the photo, the texts, the timeline, and documents from my home office that I had quietly gathered when John wasn't home. Amara reviewed the evidence with a professional blankness that gave me strange comfort. "This is serious, Deborah," she finally said. "The photo gives you leverage, but the financial ties between you two complicate things." My stomach tightened as she explained. Even though the house was mine, purchased before John moved in. The kitchen renovation 2 years ago, funded from our joint account, gave him potential claim to the increased property value. And then there were the shared savings, the joint contributions, the credit cards, all threads that tied me financially to a man who had been preparing an escape route while pretending we were building a future. "We need to protect yourself immediately," Amara said. "People who cheat don't just lie romantically. They lie financially. They lie strategically." Her words hit something deep in my chest, a truth I didn't want to accept but couldn't deny. When I got back to Natalie's house, I opened my laptop and began trying to learn more about Marina, not out of jealousy, but out of necessity. Everything about her online presence looked polished. Group photos, corporate events, friends' birthdays. John appeared in the background of more of those photos than I was comfortable with. But the biggest blow came when I discovered her wedding photography album. Marina wasn't single. She wasn't newly divorced or unhappily married. She had a husband, 2 children, a smiling, unsuspecting family. I covered my mouth, realizing I wasn't the only one living in a collapsing universe. John hadn't just betrayed me. He had willingly become part of someone else's betrayal too. I sat with that for a long time before finally opening a new email account. It didn't feel vengeful. It felt inevitable. I attached the photo. No explanation, no story, no emotional plea. Just 4 words. "Check Thursday nights." I clicked send. I closed the laptop. Natalie didn't ask what I'd done, but she looked at me for a long moment, eyes soft, proud, and sad all at once. I wasn't proud of myself, but I wasn't ashamed either. That night, lying in her guest bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something quietly terrifying. This wasn't the end of anything. This was just the beginning. The fallout began faster than I expected. 2 days after I sent the anonymous email to Marina's husband, I woke up to Natalie standing over me, holding her phone like it was radioactive. "You need to see this," she said. I sat up slowly, bracing myself. She turned the screen toward me. A mutual acquaintance had posted something vague on social media. One of those dramatic paragraphs people write when they're trying not to spill gossip, but absolutely are. "Some men will destroy their whole families because they think no one is watching. Just remember, everything done in darkness comes to light." My heart thudded. Before I could ask more, Natalie's phone vibrated again. "Oh God," she whispered. "Deborah, this is about John." 15 minutes later, I had the full story. Marina's husband confronted her. She denied everything at first. Then he found more incriminating texts on her phone, screenshots included in a group chat I didn't have access to, thank God. Some messages were from John. Others were from Marina. They weren't just having an affair. They had been planning things. Real destructive things. She had told him, "John promised to leave me." John told her he was finally ready to build a life with her. And the more details I heard, the colder my hands felt. 8 months. 8 months of lies pressed into my daily life like invisible thumbprints. 8 months of Thursday nights, unexplained gym sessions, team dinners, and phone calls he stepped outside to take. Marina's husband filed for divorce within 48 hours. John, from what I heard next, was livid, furious not at himself, but at her for letting it all collapse, for not hiding things better, for not deleting things, for getting caught. I sat at Natalie's dining table, gripping a mug of tea I couldn't bring myself to drink, listening to this secondhand avalanche. Every new detail felt like a shove, but I didn't fall. Maybe because I'd already hit the ground days ago. Maybe because part of me always knew something wasn't right long before the restaurant. Natalie touched my hand gently. "You're doing better than anyone could expect," she said. I didn't feel like I was doing well. I felt like I was balancing on the edge of something sharp. Later that afternoon, I finally heard from my attorney. Amara spoke in that steady, practiced tone she used when something important was coming. "We subpoenaed John's phone records," she said. "There's a lot." I closed my eyes. "How bad?" "You deserve the truth. The messages between him and Marina aren't just romantic. They include discussions of finances, statements about intending to leave you once he positioned himself to claim certain assets. The room blurred for a moment. He planned for this, my voice cracked. Deborah Amara said softly, he didn't cheat impulsively. He cheated while building a strategy. I pressed a hand to my forehead. It felt like my brain was full of broken glass. Amara continued gently. There are texts where Marina encourages him to push harder, to convince you to contribute more to shared accounts. And one message where she says, and I'm reading this verbatim, once she moves her savings into the joint account, you'll be set. My breath caught. She said that, yes, more than once. And John replied with agreement. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt myself detach slightly the way you do when your body decides it's had enough and shifts into a quieter gear of survival. Amara paused. This will help your case significantly. A small, bitter laugh escaped me. It's strange hearing the worst part of my life described as helpful. I know, she said, but it is. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the wall for almost 2 full minutes before Natalie stepped in with a worried look. She sat beside me without asking questions. Her presence alone kept the panic from swallowing me whole. Later that evening, the next wave hit. The HR email came first. I opened it, expecting a routine notification. But instead, I found a formal message stating someone had filed a complaint accusing me of being aggressive and threatening toward a female coworker. My stomach dropped. I barely interacted with coworkers in person. I read the sentence twice, then handed the phone to Natalie. She frowned. He didn't. He did, I whispered. It took 3 days for HR to finish their investigation. 3 days of knowing John was trying to paint me as unstable, dangerous, unprofessional. 3 days of having to sit through virtual interviews where I calmly explained I had no idea who would accuse me of something so bizarre. When HR concluded there was no evidence to support the claim, I felt relief, but only briefly. Because that same evening, a police officer knocked on Natalie's door. Natalie opened it immediately alert. The officer asked if I was Deborah. My heart kicked into a sprint. He explained politely that a complaint had been made. John claimed I had been stalking him, harassing him, showing up at his workplace, following him. I felt something inside me crack slow and painful. I've been here, I said, my voice small but steady. I haven't stepped foot near his job. I haven't even spoken to him. Natalie bristled. Officer, you can see her phone. She has him blocked. I offered the device. He reviewed the logs, nodded, and said gently, I suspected as much. His story didn't add up, but I had to follow protocol. He left without filing anything. I sank onto the couch, staring at my trembling hands. Natalie knelt beside me. He's unraveling. That's what people do when they lose control of their narrative. I believed her, but that didn't stop the fear crawling up my throat. I wasn't afraid of John hurting me physically. I was afraid of the version of me he was trying to create unstable, erratic, dangerous. By week 3, John had hired a new attorney. The aggressive type, the kind who believes intimidation is a legal strategy. Suddenly, I was being served motions claiming John deserved financial support from me, that he'd sacrificed career opportunities for our relationship, that he was entitled to compensation. John earned more than I did. It would have been laughable if it wasn't happening in real time. His family joined in next. His mother called my mother. His sister messaged Natalie. His aunt, whom I'd met twice, wrote a paragraph-long text insisting that I forgive John and restore stability. My mother called me afterward, furious on my behalf. They're lucky they're not within driving distance, she said. Absolutely lucky. But the only call that mattered came from John's father, a quiet man I once respected deeply. Deborah, he said softly, I don't want to take sides. I want to understand. John told us you misunderstood everything. I told him the truth. The restaurant, the phone records, the financial plotting, the threat of fake evidence. Silence stretched long on the line. Finally, he sighed. I don't know who my son is anymore, he said. When we hung up, I sat very still, letting the weight of that sentence settle. Later that night came the voicemail that made everything click into place. John's voice slurred, angry unraveling. You think you won, Deborah. You think you're smart. You have no idea what I know. You're going to regret this. I have things, evidence, things you did. Think carefully. I listened twice. There was nothing he could have. But that message told me one thing clearly. He was desperate. And desperate people stop thinking about consequences. That was the moment I realized defense wouldn't be enough. I needed to protect myself. And I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. The courthouse smelled like cold air, an old paper sterile quiet, a place where lives were dismantled in orderly lines and stamped signatures. As Natalie and I walked inside for the first hearing, I felt as if I were stepping into someone else's story, someone braver, someone steadier. I kept waiting for the shaking in my hands to stop, but it never did. Amara met me in the hallway, calm as always. Today is mostly procedural, she said. But John's new attorney may try theatrics. Don't respond. Let me handle everything. The doors opened, and suddenly John was right there. He looked awful in a way I had never seen, deep circles under his eyes, hair unwashed, a tightness in his jaw that suggested sleepless nights and panic. But the moment his gaze found me, something else flickered across his face. Not remorse. Resentment. He hated that I was standing tall. He hated that Natalie was beside me. He hated that I wasn't falling apart the way he expected. His attorney, a broad-shouldered man with a showman's confidence, whispered something to him and smirked in my direction. We took our seats. The judge entered brisk and expressionless. John's side went first. His attorney stood and began a dramatic speech about emotional neglect, relationship breakdown, and a partner pushed to the edge after years of being dismissed. He had taken lines from old text arguments, simple everyday disagreements, and twisted them into some theatrical narrative about me being cold, uncommunicative, emotionally withholding. He waved printed screenshots like they were damning evidence. Your Honor, he said with authority, here is repeated proof that Ms. Howard refused to engage in conflict resolution. My client often reached out seeking communication comfort, even clarity. Instead, he received rejection. The judge examined a page. One message read, I'm exhausted. Can we talk later? Another, I'm in a meeting. Not now. The judge lowered her glasses, unimpressed. This is normal communication between adults, she said flatly. There's no abuse here. Continue. John's attorney faltered for a moment, then blustered on. Furthermore, Ms. Howard has... But he never got to finish. Amara stood. Your Honor, we have evidence far more relevant. She handed the court clerk a thick envelope. May I, the judge asked. Amara nodded. These are text messages between Mr. Henderson and Ms. Marina Hale spanning nearly 8 months. They include discussions of infidelity, intent to deceive, and deliberate financial planning aimed at disadvantaging my client. The judge opened the file and began reading silently. The courtroom was still so still I could hear the clock ticking somewhere behind us. Then the judge's eyebrows lifted. She flipped another page, then another. She exhaled sharply. One message from John read, She's clueless. Once everything's in the joint account, we'll be solid. Another from Marina. She won't see it coming. Just keep pushing about the renovation. And another from John 1 I hadn't seen until now. I'm done pretending. After the money is sorted, I'm leaving. The judge set the papers down. Mr. Henderson, she said slowly, these messages are extremely concerning. John shifted in his seat. His attorney tried to speak, but she raised a hand to silence him. This is not merely an affair, the judge continued. This is evidence of premeditated financial exploitation. The word exploitation echoed in my mind like a blow. John looked at me, eyes wide with something like betrayal, as if I had wronged him by letting the truth surface. His attorney sputtered. Your Honor, these texts are taken. They are taken directly from a subpoena of his device, the judge cut in sharply. They are admissible and credible. Moving on. The rest of the hearing was procedural, but John's entire strategy collapsed in one afternoon. The judge denied his temporary support request, stating plainly that there was no foundation for financial dependency. I felt the air return to my lungs for the first time in weeks. As we exited the courtroom, John rushed after me. Deborah, wait. Natalie stepped between us, but I raised a hand. It's fine. John looked at me like a man drowning who had just realized the water wasn't going to hold him up. I never meant for things to go this far, he said. You made it worse by dragging everything into court. I stared at him. You created everything that led to this. His jaw flexed. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. Marina fed me things. She pressured me, but I didn't mean to. Destroy me, I asked quietly. Plan behind my back for months. Cheat, lie, manufacture, evidence, file, false reports. Which part didn't you mean? He looked away. I waited, hoping foolishly that I might see a glimpse of accountability, even a sliver of humanity. But when he finally met my eyes again, all I saw was self-preservation. You're really going to let them paint me as some kind of monster? They didn't paint anything, I said. You wrote your own story. His lips tightened. One day you'll realize you overreacted. Natalie stepped forward at that voice cold as steel. One day you'll realize she didn't. We walked away. Outside the courthouse, sunlight hit my face, warm, startling, almost intrusive after the cold air inside. I inhaled deeply, but something heavy still clung to me. Freedom and grief are twins. They arrive together indistinguishable at first. Later that week, Amara called with more updates. John's attorney attempted one last tactic, filing a motion claiming I had hidden assets. Financial discovery took 3 weeks. They combed through everything: my accounts, taxes, work, income, credit history. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. Meanwhile, the messages John and Marina had exchanged stayed in the record. They weren't just damaging, they were devastating. During one status hearing, the judge said directly to John, "I am deeply troubled by your conduct." The courtroom went silent. Even John's attorney didn't speak. The hearing ended quickly. Outside, as I gathered my things, I heard someone call my name. It was John's father. He approached slowly, his expression weighted with disappointment, not in me, but in the son he didn't recognize. "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything he's done, for everything you're going through." My throat tightened. "You don't owe me an apology." He shook his head gently. "Maybe not. But you deserve better. I hope you know that now." As he walked away, I realized his quiet sincerity hurt more than John's cruelty ever had. The truth had been peeled back layer by layer, and beneath it was something I hadn't expected, a sense of peace beginning to form. Fragile, small, but real. The case was nearing its end, but my story with John, the unraveling of it, was about to reach its last painful chapter. The morning the final hearing arrived, I woke before my alarm. The sky outside Natalie's guest room window was still dark, a deep blue that felt like the quiet stretch between an ending and a beginning. I lay there for a long moment listening to the faint hum of her house, steady, peaceful, safe. Everything mine hadn't been for too long. When I finally stood and got dressed, I expected to feel dread. Instead, there was only a strange, heavy calm, a sense that whatever happened today, something inside me had already closed. The courthouse was colder this time, or maybe I just noticed it more. John was already there when I arrived with Amara. He didn't look at me at first. He kept staring at the floor, shoulders slumped, face gaunt. Whatever illusion of control he'd been clinging to had crumbled weeks ago. When the judge entered, everyone stood. Then we began. John's attorney started with a last-ditch attempt to twist reality. He presented screenshots of arguments again, insisting they proved emotional abuse. He claimed I had denied John affection, support, communication. The judge didn't hide her irritation. "These are ordinary disagreements," she said sharply. "They are not abusive. Move on." John's attorney then shifted to claiming I had hidden assets. Amara countered immediately, reminding the court that full financial discovery had already been conducted and nothing questionable was found. The judge nodded. "I see no evidence of financial concealment. Continue." Finally, Amara stood. She handed the judge a small binder. This contains the full text messages between Mr. Henderson and Ms. Marina Hale showing intent to deceive, manipulate, and financially exploit Ms. Howard. The judge opened the binder, flipping through page after page. The silence in the room grew dense. John stared at the table, jaw clenched. His attorney sat stiffly, hands folded, knowing what was coming. After several minutes, the judge looked up. "Mr. Henderson, your conduct throughout this relationship and legal process has been deeply concerning. These messages demonstrate clear intent to deceive and financially harm Ms. Howard. The court does not take that lightly." John swallowed hard. His throat bobbed once, twice. The judge continued. "Given the evidence, the court awards the home solely to Ms. Howard. Mr. Henderson will receive compensation limited only to his contribution toward the kitchen renovation." A murmur rippled through the room. $12,000. That was it. The house John had plotted to claim his supposed leverage, his imagined victory, was gone. My lungs loosened. The pressure on my sternum eased slowly, painfully, like something long stuck finally shifting free. The judge turned the page. "As for financial accounts, Ms. Howard will retain her individual assets. Shared accounts will be divided according to the contributions documented. Mr. Henderson's request for long-term support is denied." John's attorney tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. "The court does grant rehabilitative support to Mr. Henderson for 18 months, given the intertwined nature of their household. $1,100 per month." The number was far lower than he had demanded. It was in every sense mercy. The judge closed the binder. "This case is concluded." A gavel struck, a sharp final sound. Everyone stood. John did too, but he didn't move. He just stared at the judge's bench long after she'd stepped away, as if hoping something there might change if he waited long enough. I gathered my things. My fingers barely trembled. My heartbeat was steady for the first time in months. When I stepped into the hallway, he followed. "Deborah," he said, voice hoarse. I stopped. Natalie wasn't with me this time. Amar had already stepped into another conference room. It was just the two of us in the long corridor lined with marble and silence. He took a step closer. Was all of this worth it? Tearing everything apart. I studied him. Really studied him for the first time since the restaurant. His eyes were exhausted. His posture defeated. Not humbled. Just angry at losing. I answered quietly. You tore it apart. I just stopped trying to tape it back together. He flinched, but only for a second. You didn't have to drag it through court, he said. We could have handled it privately. You made me look like a monster. You made yourself look like that, I replied. All I did was bring the truth into a room where it couldn't hide. He stepped closer, still lowering his voice. I was confused. Marina told me things. She said you'd never fight for me. A sad smile tugged at my lips. She was wrong. I fought for us for years. You just didn't notice until I stopped. He exhaled shakily. She left me, you know, as soon as her husband filed. She said she couldn't handle the chaos. His voice cracked. I lost everything. I didn't respond. He looked at me, searching for pity, forgiveness, softness, anything familiar to cling to. I didn't offer any. I hope you're happy, he whispered, bitterness souring every word. You ruined my life. I held his gaze, calm, steady, almost gentle. You ruined your own life, I said quietly. I just refused to let you ruin mine too. His face froze, like the words hit somewhere he wasn't prepared to feel. Then I turned and walked away. Outside the courthouse, the air was warm, brighter than it had been all week. I stood on the steps for a moment, letting sunlight fill the places that had been cold for too long. That afternoon, I returned to my house for the first time in months. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and felt an ache I wasn't expecting. The rooms looked the same, but didn't feel the same. The walls still remembered him. The shadows still carried pieces of the life I thought we'd had. So I began changing it. I repainted the bedroom soft sage instead of the icy gray he'd chosen. I moved the furniture. I opened windows that had stayed shut for too long. Every change, every brushstroke, every adjustment was a quiet reclaiming of myself. Days passed, then weeks. Sometimes healing showed up in small ways. A peaceful morning coffee. The first night I slept through, the moment I realized I no longer checked my phone expecting a message from him. One evening, a new number texted me. I hope you're happy. You ruined my life. I stared at it for a moment. Then I blocked the number without replying. Peace isn't dramatic. It doesn't crash into your life. It arrives softly, step by step, when you stop opening the door to people who thrive in chaos. A month later, I found the photo on my phone, the one from the restaurant. For a long minute, I just looked at it, not with pain, not with anger, with clarity. That single moment hadn't ruined my life. It had saved me from living a lie for 10 more years. I finally deleted it. And for the first time in a very long time, the silence around me felt like freedom, not loss.